Welcome back. I'm Anisha Tank. You are watching the Global Common Channel here at the Singapore FinTech Festival 2020. It's day 5. It's the Talent Summit. Businesses around the world have embraced remote work and work from home practices. Oh yes, the number of times you've had to be told to unmute yourself. Now, in a way, that was deemed impossible before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. But now, of course, we're all doing it. Depending on where in the world you are, your organization is either transitioning to a hybrid work environment or further extending the work from home policy for the foreseeable future. So the next panel will be discussing more on the future of talent in a workplace transformed by COVID-19. Moderating the panel will be Ravi Bhogaraju, who is the Principal Advisor, Future of Work at Ecosystem. The panel will consist of Annika Grant, who is Global HR Director at Dyson, Randeep Sudan, who is Chief Executive Officer at Multiverse, Virendr Agarwal, who is Chief Executive Officer of Ramco Systems, Paul Bassett, who is co-founder and partner of Seek and Square Peg Capital, and Dr. Julie Albright, digital sociologist, author, and lecturer. Sandeep Kalra, who is Chief Executive Officer of Persistent Systems, deep breath, and Miyuki Suzuki, President of Asia Pacific, Japan, and Greater China at Cisco. Well, it's quite a panel, so let's go live to Ravi and the panel of thought leaders to tackle the discussion around the future of talent for the workplace.
Thank you, Manisha, and welcome everyone to this exciting panel. For those of you who are joining in from all around the world and setting aside time to do this, thank you for tuning in to this exciting panel. I'm pretty sure the next 50 minutes is going to be fantastic for all of us. So get your drink and let's kick this off. So let me just do a quick round of introductions. Thanks, Manisha, for doing one quick round, but I'm the Principal Advisor at Ecosystem. We run the Future of Work Capability and Business Agility practice. We are a research and consulting organization that's really trying to bring together expertise in technology, workplace, and people capability to help organizations navigate and capitalize on these opportunities that these times bring to us. I also have great pleasure in doing a bit more detailed introduction. Let me start with Dr. Julie Albright. She's a digital sociologist. She sits on the board of Infrastructure Masons, and she's the author of Left to Their Own Devices, How Digital Natives Are Reshaping the American Dream. Thank you, Julie, for coming in so early in the morning. It's 4, so we are greatly honored to have you on the.
Thanks for having me.
Next is Miyuki Suzuki. She's the president for Cisco Asia Pacific, Japan, and China. She's responsible for developing Cisco's strategy in the region. She has a great passion for talent development and driving diversity in both teams as well as her in the thought. It's very exciting to have her because Cisco has again been named this year on the list of Fortune Best 100 companies to work for. Number 4 on the list, 23 years and counting. Welcome, Miyuki, to the panel.
Thank you, Ravi.
Annika is a global leader in HR. She has over 20 years of business experience alongside a passion for people and developing their full potential. Annika served in a diverse range of senior roles at Accenture, Uber, and now she runs the global organization in Dyson. She's also the board advisor at Ecosystem. Thank you, Annika. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Ravi.
Paul is dialing in from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you, Paul, for dialing in such late in the evening. Paul's the co-founder for SquarePeg. SquarePeg aspires to be the choice partner for founders in Australia, Israel, and Southeast Asia. There's a number of businesses that SquarePeg has. Some of them I've personally used, things like Athena, Canva, Finacell, Fiverr, Property Guru, and Stripe. Great to have you with us, Paul.
Thanks, Ravi.
Next is VA, or Virendr Agarwal. He's been leading business transformations through technology for 30 over years. Based in Singapore, the CEO of Ramco Systems, he believes that disruption-led innovation is the new status quo. And that's what he uses to drive as a mantra to drive his team and his customers through this. Welcome, VA, to this panel. Great to have you.
Thanks, Ravi. Thank you so much.
Sandeep Kalra is the CEO of Persistent Systems. He serves on the board as an exec director. Persistent is a leading global solutions company that delivers business acceleration, modernization of enterprise, and digital product engineering. Congratulations, Sandeep, for the ISG 2020 Star of Excellence, and great to have you from all the way New Jersey. So welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Ravi.
Last but not least, we've got Randeep. Randeep's the founder of Multiverse, is a Singaporean social enterprise. It aims to leverage data, analytics, AI to help government, businesses, and individuals better anticipate and prepare for an uncertain future. Before this, he served as a global advisor in digital strategy and digital development at the World Bank, where he led a global team of experts. He's known for his work with the digital economy. Randeep's also a board advisor at Ecosystem. Thank you, Randeep, for dialing in from Thailand today.
Thank you, Ravi.
Excellent. So as you see, guys, this is a fantastic panel. We've got people coming in from all over the world. So I hope you've got your drinks in hand, and let's kick this off. So I want to start with a warm-up question, which is, as a panel, I want to pose to you, what's been your one big aha moment as you've led yourself and your teams in this COVID era? Maybe I start with Miyuki first.
Sure. Cisco's lucky. We've got the technology, the tools. We were able to go immediately to remote working. But you have to really value a culture of trust, because when you're working remotely, you need to lean on your colleagues, trust that they'll do what they promise to deliver, and that, and they need to be able to trust their managers, that the managers are caring about them, both spiritually, physically, in terms of the technology available and the tools, etc. So you need to have this kind of, not just the technology, not just the processes, but also the culture of trust. That is very key.
Fantastic. And that's a great kickoff, Miyuki. VA, what's been your experience?
See, for us, initially it was a state of panic. We were wondering the demand will totally dry off. But surprisingly, it turned out to be the most cash positive quarters, the most profitable quarters we have ever seen in the company's history. We realized travel was massively overrated. Being in front of customer physically was massively overrated. And working from anywhere gave such a productivity boost is unimaginable that we wasted so much time traveling up and down to work. So we have had a run which is unbelievable. Our stock price is up 10 times in past 7-8 months.
Wow. Now that's the travel piece is definitely something that we've always overrated too much. I think that's so true. Julie, how do you see this from where you sit?
Well, with Infrastructure Masons, it's interesting because we're now a global organization, and we've always been global. We have an executive director in London. We have one in Hong Kong, someone up in Portland, the Silicon Valley, LA. So we were sort of a always remote organization, but we realized that face-to-face matters. So for us, we miss seeing each other in person, and we miss some of these events. And we feel that it's a way to build on things over Zoom, for example, but it's a little bit harder to kind of build initial relationships that way. Some people are finding.
That is so true. I think there's a lot of us who are probably missing the ability to have that social connection and being able to go out and meet people and build relationships. Sandeep, how's work for you looking like?
So for us, we are a IT services industry kind of an organization, and we have 11,000 of us spread globally. For us, the biggest aha moment was, so far, everyone believed we needed to have our workforce in our offices, in our customer offices, and so on. And all of a sudden, when we transferred our workforce to home, and they were working from home, everyone realized that the basic fundamental assumption of the IT services industry, the paradigm where people had to be in a workplace, it got totally shattered. So I am, pretty pleasantly surprised with this, and this will lay the foundation of new ways of working for our industry.
Definitely, I do agree with that. Anika, how has the journey been with Dyson?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of an aha moment, I would say the thing that most struck me through this was how important it came for leaders to really exude empathy. And I think empathy actually became a critical leadership capability this year. You know, really leaning into to understand the context, not just the work context, but the personal context of the people that you're working with. And, you know, like all of us sitting at home right now, you can't get away from kids coming in or dogs barking or whatever is going on in your life. So for me, I think the leaders that did the best and led the best were those that just really leaned in and really grew their empathy, which goes back to Miyaki's point around creating trust.
It's so true. I think the empathy has always been a key leadership trait. But now more than ever, the ability to exude that through a digital medium has become so much critical. Fantastic. Thank you for saying that. So, Paul, what's been your aha moment?
Look, I think, March, April, there was a big sigh of relief from a work from home perspective where everyone said, wow, this works and it's a lot better than we expected. And we've got the basic tools to work from home where everything's in the cloud. We can use Zoom or Teams. We can use Slack, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think there was kind of this everyone feeling kind of relieved that it was sort of business as usual in a way that we didn't expect. Now, sort of 7 or 8 months later, I think all of us are saying, okay, we've now been doing this for a long time. We're starting to see some of the real costs as a result of not having the normal interaction that we're used to, not being able to work face to face, and really grappling with what is the long-term answer. And I think, it's starting to emerge what that answer looks like. But frankly, I think organisations around the world, big, small, local, global, are still grappling with what does the future of work from the office and remote work and hybrid arrangements look like. And that's going to take us several years, I think, to land answers, and those answers are going to vary enormously.
That is so true. I think it's early stages, and it's so rich to see that input come through. Randeep, you've had this very unique perspective of dealing with a number of different companies and, say, governmental agencies. How have you seen this, and what's been your biggest aha moment?
So, Ravi, the biggest surprise, which should not be a surprise for me, was to see the fragility for millions of people in terms of their livelihoods. So if you look at the global workforce, it is about 3.3 billion people in the workforce. By the second quarter of this year, nearly 500 million of them had lost jobs, which is a huge, huge number. If you look at the informal economy, in fact, 60% of the workforce is in the informal sector globally. And their incomes were hit so hard that there are estimates that it shaved off something like $3.5 trillion to their incomes. Now, that means a pandemic could cause such devastating impact, especially on the lives of people who are the most vulnerable, is something which I would not have imagined, but for going through this experience.
That is one thing about the pandemic which really hit home to me as well. It is not a medical issue alone. It's a social issue. It's an economic issue. I think the true loss can only be seen holistically rather than just looking at either work or jobs or health. I think it's all in one. And that makes it very difficult to deal with. Fantastic, guys. So we started by saying it's trust. That's quite important. Travel and business needs to be looked at differently now. There needs to be also a topic of how do we build social connections, even though we may not be able to see people physically. There is the aspect of still trying to figure this one out, and the core aspects of empathy having to come through. And of course, Randeep, as you very nicely summed it up, this is an overall social, economic topic, not just a technology or a talent topic. So thank you for that, guys. I think that was a great kickoff. Let's go a little bit into how you have seen, what ideas or innovative ideas you've seen coming up when it comes to talent or talent trends. So maybe I'd invite Julie first, see what you were finding from your vantage point, and then we go around.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I've been looking at some of this in my book, and for the last few years, how particularly younger digital natives are what I call coming untethered. The idea that they want to work remotely because they can work on devices and they grew up in this kind of a world. And all those trends have amplified now under COVID. 5 main things that I've seen that impact the workforce. One is a flight from the cities. This is going around globally, a dispersion away from cities as opposed to a movement toward urbanization. That's a massive change. Second is a big rise in work from home and untethered working. Third, as bodies become risky under COVID, I see a rise in touchless and automation, a big drive toward that. Fourth, again, as we're working from home and working remotely, a higher drive for a desire for security, both cyber and physical. And 5, a heightened need and desire for seeking wellness, especially amongst younger workers. We already see a lot of anxieties and depressions and things like that. And the loneliness of being isolated and also being in a global pandemic means that we really need to put an emphasis, I think, from the leadership side all the way down in terms of integrating wellness into the workforce. Those are the 5 trends I see.
Fantastic. Annika, you've had this unique perspective of having to work not just in an office, but also managing a workforce which is very diverse. It's everywhere. You're in retail stores. You also have manufacturing setups. What kind of trends are you seeing that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen is a propensity for more agile teams to come together, agile and cross-functional teams coming together, sometimes almost spontaneously, to be honest, to solve problems. And so it started at the beginning as we spun up these incident management teams in each city to think about, how do we need to respond to some of the very real issues and regulations around shutdowns, around government requirements. And then we saw people pivot as we accelerated in this digital transformation, and we saw teams again coming together from global and local teams from our digital and marketing teams to actually push out much faster some of the digital support that was needed to drive sales through a digital channel. At the same time, we were retraining some of our retail staff that typically would be working in a physical store to be using digital channels to be setting up demonstrations and putting content on different social media streams, again, driving some of our customers towards some of our Dyson.com or retail.com outlets. So I think that's something that I can see also us continuing in the future. This idea that it's less hierarchical, there's less structure in roles and a need to just move much faster, no matter where you are in the organization, to come together as a team and solve real problems.
Fantastic. That is true. I think it has caused a lot of businesses to pivot, and that's really quite critical. Work tech is one of those crucial elements that Ramco brings. How have you seen this evolve in terms of talent trends?
One is the distribution has become a lot more digital. Somebody used the word digital native. If you see, there are people who have added a couple of $1 trillion to their personal wealth. If you see from Elon Musk to Jeff Bezos. So the digital companies have reaped enormous amount of benefits, while a lot of people have lost jobs down the line. So the divide has become much more. So I see now talent which is free of location. You can be located anywhere. And the talent has to be a lot more digitally savvy, because the digital transformation which would have taken place in 20 years took place in few months. and the speed at which it has taken place is that the companies who are ready for disruption are the one reaping the benefits. So you have to have a lot of people in your company who have innovation mindset, a disruption mindset. You need to have very flat organization structures. You no longer have the corner office. The CEO has the same space on a Zoom call or a Teams call. There's no corner office. There's no secretary guarding access to you and so on. So it's a much more flatter structure, and you pretty much value people for what they bring to the table and not the titles they carry. So I think it's a lot of flattening of the structure, paying people based on what they contribute, not necessarily based on location. And the need for digital talent has become a lot more. And the need for perpetually learning parts of the company. Everybody needs to perpetually be learning. And learning has also become democratized. You just pay the employees for the money they spend on various Coursera and so on and so forth, and not necessarily have formal training rooms and all the stuff that goes on, and at their own pace. So a lot has changed. And for companies like us, we always work on the edge of chaos. We are trying things which nobody is thinking of or trying of. So for us, we enjoy disruptions like this. You're the first one to get funded by the Singapore government to build a pandemic control system, which we have deployed a lot of companies to help them come to work quickly. Lots and lots of technology has gone, and we are responding to a lot of airport inquiries globally. So we just pivoted very quickly and built up a product overnight almost, and introduced into the market, and it's been so we need to react very fast and innovate very, very fast.
Agree. I think this has been a great opportunity for companies which are able to pivot. Miyuki, how have you pivoted? I know that Cisco's always been on the edge of remote and remote first. What kind of trends are you seeing?
Yes, so the world literally shifted from kind of a physical virtual hybrid to going almost all virtual overnight. And what this means is that people are connected through networks in virtual distributed locations. And one of the bad side effects of that is cybersecurity threats have ballooned. So in terms of talent and skill sets, there is currently a real dearth of people who understand cybersecurity management. So that's one of the talent areas that is going to be in much demand. The other is much better, and contactless is the name of the game right now. So Japan, that used to be a cash society, is rapidly moving towards contactless payments through cards or mobile phones. You go to Changi Airport, and you always used to have to do fingerprint to authenticate yourself. Now it's facial recognition. Robotics is being used to help care for patients in old people's homes and hospitals, or to check people in at hospitals. So things like, hotels. So things like AI, robotics, big data analytics, those are kind of skill sets that will also become much in demand. Drone technology to do delivery of food or essential products to homes, instead of having someone a courier turn up and give you a parcel physically. These are all innovations that are real now in our society.
It's fair. Thank you so much. I think that is so true that we have seen this rapid evolution, and what we would have taken maybe years to do is now possible almost overnight. It almost feels natural now. Paul, can I pick on you to just give us some insights on what you're seeing in terms of talent coming through your portfolio companies or the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, look, I think there's sort of three broad themes that I think are really exciting us around kind of the future of work and the future of workforce at the moment. One is just what this, and the issue that we talked about a moment ago at the beginning is, what does the nature of physical versus remote work look like in a post-pandemic world? What are the tools that are going to be required? We've got the basic tools required to do remote work, but they need a lot more granularity. They need a lot more nuance. So there's a lot of opportunities for founders to solve some of the problems that have been identified over the last 6 months. Things work basically fine, but they don't work as well as we'd like them to. And how are companies going to respond in a post-pandemic world to the desire for people to both work in the office and work from home? How they're going to find how we're going to find the kind of the right mix, and that'll vary company by company. I think the second theme, the theme that we've seen a lot through, one of our portfolio companies, Fiverr is a great example, is the increased importance of freelancing, particularly in the current environment where companies have had to transition their business from physical to digital, for example, very, very quickly. How do you find the skills? How do you find the capabilities to help you to deliver the products and services that you need to go from, for example, a physical retailer or a physical restaurant to a virtual restaurant? And so that, that sort of rise of gig economy, freelance services, independent workforce, that has really, really accelerated over the past 12 months. I guess the theme that I'm most excited about, and there's something that is going to play out, not over the next 12 months, but over the next 5, 10, 15 years, is the impact of AI and automation. We are going to see industrial revolution type change, but not occurring over 50 or 100 years, but occurring over 5 or 10 or 15 years. And there are obviously huge numbers of people whose jobs are going to change radically as a result of AI and automation. In some cases, whose jobs are going to disappear. Lots and lots of new jobs are going to be created. And for companies and for individuals and countries to manage that transition in a seamless way as possible, I think is one of the great challenges in our community over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. And it's something that both concerns us, but also excites us in terms of the potential to solve some of these problems in the medium term.
Fantastic, Paul. Having used some of your platforms, I do say that it's so much easier now to find short-term talent that can really fix issues quite radically. But you're right, in the longer term, there are going to be significant challenges on how both the worlds need to come together in a synergistic way. Sandeep, you have a fastest growing millennial population in your company. What kind of trends are you seeing as you're sort of shepherding them?
Yeah, so our industry has seen a number of interesting changes. So for us, not only is the millennial population a boon as, this point in time, they, as some of our colleagues referred, they are device anywhere. So they are finding this very interesting. And they are the ones who have adopted the fastest to this change. For our industry, it has pretty much become virtualization of everything. Virtualization of talent. It's basically work is going where the talent is across boundaries, whether it is within US, within the other parts of India and so on. We are seeing tier 2, tier 3 cities booming. A lot of people used to move from these cities to main towns to kind of find work. Now they are happily settled in their cities, and thanks to the infrastructure and thanks to the likes of technologies from Cisco and others, that networks are pretty stable. People are able to work from anywhere very seamlessly. So we have seen that unlock a lot of possibilities, not only talent from anywhere, but also things like, women in tech. We used to run a program which was called Get Her Back to Tech, because a lot of women, used to go and not be able to, work because of maternity, marriage, many other things. Now with this ubiquity and virtualization of work, we are unlocking a lot of other possibilities for people like them. So a lot of good reimagining of workforce, reimagining of ways that we work is happening, and I'm pretty sure it's going to upend the industry the way we look at it.
That is so true. I think the possibilities of talent pools now being available in different geographies, in different communities, in being able to have more flexible type of work arrangements, that has become almost mainstream. And I think companies which are adapting to that are going to be far more competitive in the days to come. Randeep, your take on this and unique perspective on how you see these trends evolving.
So if I look at the trends and take a long view, take a 10-year view, trends always start as signals, and these signals get amplified over time. So if I was to focus on a central problem, which is really important from the perspective of the future of work, it is to be able to rapidly skill people for jobs and for work which will be constantly changing and evolving. Now that's the central challenge which I think countries will have to face. Now, one way where one could use technology to do this might be a combination of digital twins and extended reality. Now, we are just starting, and the whole piece on digital twins, there are countries which have started working on strategies on digital twins. So the UK, for example, has a national strategy on digital twins. I think this will catch on as more countries realize that instead of training people to adapt to technology, actually countries should be encouraging technologies to adapt to people, right? So it is to think differently about the whole skilling piece. And the way that this could play out was that if you had digital twins and you were able to overlay on that extended reality, it might be possible to actually train people rapidly, and they may not require such advanced training either, because technology would be able to guide them in accomplishing whatever work that needs to be accomplished. So just like South Korea started with PC bounds, with gaming sort of places, which actually took off the whole internet revolution in South Korea, and it really, positioned that country at the forefront of digital technologies. I feel that we are likely to see in days ahead, a similar sort of movement on extended reality, which might allow the decentralized training and the rapid skilling of large number of people, which may be one approach to being able to adapt to this change of technology, automation, AI that we are witnessing.
Fantastic input, Randeep. I think this is one area that is really gaining a lot of traction, and for fair reason. I think the amount of change that's in the system right now and the need for people to develop new skills that rapidly is quite crucial. I think the shift from going towards longer term education to really micro-credentialing, micro-skilling, to meet the immediate need and being able to do this in rapid succession is going to be quite key to the whole AI, BI augmentation sort of space. And I think all of us have a role to play in being able to get ourselves and our teams out there. That's great input, guys. I'm going to go a little bit back and ask you to reflect and talk about what watch-outs you see as we lead ourselves into the future. What risks do you see out there? What would you, give advice to the people who are tuning in? So maybe I would start with Paul. Paul, what kind of risks do you foresee?
Look, I think we've seen this period of intense change in an incredibly short period of time, and the changes come about as a result of necessity. And as individuals, as companies, we are incredibly adaptable, we're incredibly resilient. I think the hard thing for organizations to work out is what are the changes that are permanent, and what are the things that are kind of going to go snap back to the way they were. And so, for example, we're seeing in my hometown in Melbourne, I mean, we had an incredibly long lockdown of sort of 16, 17 weeks. The thing that I've found most interesting is the extent to which people have wanted to embrace social interaction in a really intense way. And so, restaurants are full again very, very quickly, and people want to interact, and we're sort of social creatures. And I think the trick in this is actually working out, because there's a whole range of changes that have occurred in how we work and how we live, in the products and services that consumers and businesses want. There's a whole range of things that have changed forever. There are other things that are going to transition back to the way they were, and maybe even more intensely than the way they were. And that's going to be a real skill to actually work out what the world looks like in a post-pandemic period. And all those things are going to be incredibly obvious in hindsight. They're all going to look at them and say, yeah, that was really obvious, it panned out that way. Yeah. But this stuff, it's really the people now who are thinking about these things and identifying these opportunities and identifying these threats, who are going to thrive coming out of the pandemic. The last 6 months has seen perhaps the greatest transfer of wealth and the greatest change in business and consumer behaviour that we've ever seen in such a compressed period. And we're actually going to see a sort of another version of it through 2021 and 2022 and beyond in terms of what does the world look like long term as a result of this pandemic. And that's going to require very, very agile decision making, people being very, very open-minded, and really being prepared to move very, very quickly in response to trends that are occurring.
Thank you, Paul. I think that's, you're so right. The compression of this change and the intensity with which it has happened is really forcing us to rethink, and we really need to think what could stay in the longer run. Julie, you talked a little bit about how natives are coping with this. Do you see any risks?
Well, I guess I would see two sets of risks, and really I think those are around health. One is around the health of organizations in the sense of cybersecurity, physical security. Mm-hmm. You know, as we move executives away from offices, you know, suddenly new risk vectors open up. So rethinking risk in companies, I would say, is A. And B, again, the emphasis on wellness. And as we have this remote workforce out there, how do we think about that? How do we think about that in terms of mental health and physical health? Again, as Paul said, we are social creatures, and suddenly people are put out from doing that, put out from these normal sort of social interactions, and it's impacting people, especially, again, younger workers. So just really thinking that through as well.
It's a fair point, and I think wellness is going to be very sharp focus. Annika, do you see similar patterns or trends? What would you call out as watch-outs for us?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Julie. I think that is going to be a big trend, and one that companies, I think, are really starting to shift towards. And I think wellness, emotional well-being is actually becoming a board-level discussion. It's not just an HR thing anymore. The other thing, though, that I call out as a watch-out, I think it was Sandeep earlier who was talking about how technology can really be a way to level the playing field for minorities, women, maybe for people with disabilities who, you know, if they can work remotely, if they can work at home, as long as they have the technology, it just opens up so many more options. But there's also a downside that comes through that. And we've seen that women and minorities have been more adversely impacted through this crisis than other parts of the population. So I think that is a two-edged sword, and we really need to think as we use more new technologies, that we keep our eye on maybe some of the unintended consequences that come with those new technologies, particularly AI.
It's a fair point, Annika, and Miyuki and I were chatting about that earlier. So maybe, Miyuki, you could come in on how it's impacting caregiving and how women are impacted. So maybe you could weigh in on that.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, without wanting to stereotype roles, particularly in Asia Pacific, the fact is, even if women have careers, and even pre-pandemic, they would go to work, come back home, and they'd primarily be responsible for cooking dinner and looking after their children or their parents or what have you. So there's a huge level of stress during the pandemic on women. Another thing, someone mentioned about, you know, as a result of COVID, there's an economic divide that is being aggravated. There's also a digital divide that is being aggravated. I think we all here agree that technology helps level the playing field, but not everyone has access to the same level of technology, and not all governments are concentrating on technology as an enabler in their government stimulus packages. You know, they're more interested in propping up jobs or whatever, which are all good things. But if you don't have access to the digital infrastructure, it's really hard to survive. And then the final risk, I would say, is that we're looking very inward, you know, because we can't travel, we're staying in our homes. So we're becoming very internalized. And we mustn't lose that intercultural touch, you know, the ability to share cultural experiences across border, which stimulates diversity, which stimulates real conversation and innovation. So that's what I'm afraid of losing if we continue in this vein for too long.
It's fantastic. I do agree that there was great value in bringing together minds and cultures, being able to innovate and exchange ideas. I think we should not lose that. In the interest of time, I'm going to switch to talent and tech trends. I'm going to invite VA to kick this off. VA, what do you predict is which technology or talent trend do you think will go mainstream in 18 months from now? VA, you're on mute.
Yeah, I see a tremendous shift taking place toward what I will call voice artificial intelligence, voice AI. I see the death of user interface in what is called UI, UX. It will be all natural language. Mm-hmm. And most interactions, most transactions will be done a lot more in natural language. I think blockchain will come into its own, especially the smart contracts part of it and so on and so forth. Crypto, Bitcoin will start becoming mainstream. We run our payroll business and we have so many requests for incorporating payment in crypto now by companies, which is a big surprise for us. Apart from this, I think that AI will become so mainstream that you won't feel it is AI. Just like when you're typing in Microsoft, it automatically suggests, CC this person, that person. That's a huge amount of AI going on. The auto spelling check is, auto correction is huge amount of AI that is taking place. AI will become more personal in the sense it will be real-time personalization will be visible. So let's say Amazon recommends people who read this also read this. They may just mention people who read this also read this, depending upon from which country you're coming from.
Makes sense.
Right now they do it for everybody, whether you come from US or Timbuktu, they will do the same. But people coming from Japan read something else, not what Americans read. So that level of personalization will come in, and it may go into micro-segmentation based on your level of education, your interests, and so on, because these companies are tracking pretty much everything, much more than each one of us know about ourselves. So given this,
I think that's interesting to see how you've sort of taken AI, made it into an augmented package and added NLP or natural language processing and almost made it hyper-personalized. I think that definitely, I look forward to that, but in some ways it also scares me because I have no idea who's tracking what. Randeep, what's your take on this?
So I think, of course, Virendra has mentioned most of the important trends. But one thing that we might see in the next 18 months is a company, maybe it's LinkedIn or Upwork, getting into this whole piece on pop-up enterprises. So pop-up enterprise in the future will be algorithms being able to put together teams which can be deployed to solve a particular problem, and then those teams will disband. Which means that the algorithmic, configuration of talent and being able to do that, very rapidly is going to be a very valuable thing, especially in a situation where so many people are losing jobs. And it is a trend which in any case is happening with the gig economy. So I feel that in the next 18 months, we might be able to see the emergence of algorithmic, establishment of pop-up enterprises in a way that we have not seen before.
That is fantastic. And if you do that, then Paul, what does that do to all the fantastic gig platforms you've got going?
Yeah, I think Randek's perspective is super interesting. I think we're going to see a real blurring between what is a full-time employee, what is a contractor, what is a freelancer. Companies want to get products and services to market more quickly. There is a need for more personalization, localization of products. We have a huge amount of data on our customers and what our customers want and what we're looking for. And so workforces being much more agile and flexible, and whether it's sort of pop-up workforces, whether it's freelancers who are kind of much more on demand as opposed to on a sort of particular project basis, the ability of companies to have much more variability into how their workforce is structured. I think that's going to be an enormous trend. I think it has, some incredibly positive aspects for individuals in terms of flexibility, freedom, ability to work from anywhere in the world with customers anywhere in the world. It also has some challenges. I mean, there are a whole range of things that come with employment. In some countries, health insurance is what comes with permanent employment, social interaction and the like. And so, and that in turn is going to lead to a whole range of different products and services servicing those employees who are essentially independent freelancers, whether it's in relation to financing needs, whether it's in relation to healthcare needs, whether it's in relation to training and education. And so it really is, I think, a very dynamic time in terms of what the workforce looks like.
I completely agree, Paul, and I think this opens up a lot more opportunity. Sandeep, being the go-to for engineering firm, what kind of impacts do you see or opportunities do you see with this in coming mainstream in 18 months?
So a number of colleagues have talked about it. I'll just give a different flavor to it. Number one, and the most important thing that will emerge in my mind is some kind of a platform to authenticate the talent. Because now with talent becoming virtual, becoming omnipresent, there's a need to authenticate the credentials of people as they move from one gig to other gig or from one company to another company. Because no longer are those, physical things being done the same way as they were being done earlier. Even the onboarding here in the US, for example, or in India, it's all virtual. It's all selection of people virtual, onboarding virtual. And so there has to be some way of authenticating whatever the people are saying is the real talent that they bring. Second, platforms like the one that we are using or WebEx and so on and so forth will become even more omnipresent, and they will customize to bring up that pop-up teams in, and collaboration within companies like ourselves, because we are always bringing new project teams, dismantling project teams. Earlier, it was easy to bring people in a room and do it. Now it will be these platforms which will facilitate it even more.
Fantastic. I think the collaboration platform, and I want Miyuki to come in on this because I want to get her view on how she sees Cisco and companies like that coming and supporting this trend. What do you think is going to go mainstream, Miyuki?
I think, everybody has mentioned this, as we collaborate more remotely, we've got to be able to have very, very high performance, and we're going to see more enhancements of this experience. I mean, this is a relatively two-dimensional experience we're having right now, but increasingly, augmented reality, virtual reality, having a much more kind of personal experience, even if you're several thousand miles apart, that's going to become important. Brainstorming so that you can all kind of join in and build on an idea at the same time, rather than having, if you like, a binary, you speak now, I speak later, kind of relationship online is also going to become important. So, technological enhancements are going to be critical, and we're working on a lot of those at the moment. Transcription of what is said, so that you can have your minutes, and that's already happening. Real-time translation, so that people from different nations can communicate with each other. Even if they're on this, you might be talking to me in another language, but I will be hearing you in my language. So there are going to be all sorts of new innovations coming into the collaboration space.
Fantastic. Annika, 30 seconds for you to weigh in on the people and human element before we tune out.
I think maybe just building on this conversation around the gig workers and the gig economy. And I think one of the big takeaways we've had here is something that Randeep said right at the beginning, which is we have a really large portion of the workforce that's just going to expand that has no safety net. And so I think that there is a real need for companies as well as governance to figure out how we can put together the right regulatory structure so that people have the right safety net, so that we can actually build a safe place for the future of work.
That is a fantastic way to wrap this up, guys. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a phenomenal 50 minutes, and I appreciate all of you coming in early morning or late evening. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks for your time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you.
Great stuff. And our huge compliments to Ravi for managing a 7-person panel. That was absolutely phenomenal. Of course, they're the Ecosystem Global Leaders Roundtable. COVID-19 definitely throwing new challenges for the workplace. And it's encouraging to see how these thought leaders are taking things very positively, aren't they? And moving ahead with embracing the changes.